Hi everyone, I'm Gina from Gina C Creates, and today I'm going to show you how to make these layered paper mandalas, and I'm going to show you how to turn them into gorgeous home decor items for this springtime. My template can be scaled down to fit in a 9 by 9 shadow box, or you can use it on a 11 by 14 wooden plank. Today I'm going to show you how to make the 11 by 14 wooden plank, and some items you're just going to need is your handy dandy Cricut and some cardstock, some foam tape. It's just really basic essential craft items to make such a gorgeous piece. So let's dive right into it. First thing we're going to do is prep our wood panel. And this is a 11 by 14 wood painting panel. You can find this at Hobby Lobby, Michael's, or Amazon. And it's basically just like a canvas, but it has a hard surface. And what we're going to do is lay down some protective paper, and we're going to take some acrylic paint and a foam brush. I'm just using a basic flat white paint, and I'm just going to pour a small amount and mix it with kind of a lot of bit of water because I want to give it a whitewashed look, so where I could see my wood grains through the paint. And you really just need one coat to cover your whole wooden panel. I actually mix in more water to get it nice and runny so I could layer on that thin paint. It's kind of like a tint to your wooden panel. And you can flip it on its sides to make sure that you cover the sides of your panel, because this will show when you hang it on the wall, or if you set it on a bookshelf. You're going to really want these to be painted. So you're going to let this dry for about 2 hours. So we could just set this aside. And now we're going to move on to make the mandala. So here are a few supplies you'll need to make the mandala. You'll need your Cricut scraper, some scissors, your Cricut spatula, your X-Acto knife, craft glue, your glue gun, and some foam tape, and some blue painter's tape for holding down your cardstock. And here are all the cardstock that I use. I have 9 sheets of cardstock, and they're all different colors. You have your black and white. I have 3 shades of blue. It's kind of like a teal, and 2 shades of pink, a yellow, and a green. And this is the brand that I use. It's Recollection, and it's 65 pound in weight. You could get this on Amazon and, of course, Michael's. So now that we have our supplies, we could go ahead and open up Design Space, and we're going to go to Upload, and we are going to browse and find your downloads folder where you find my paper mandala template. And it's going to be a zip file, so we're going to have to right click and extract, and it'll give you an open folder to work with. You're going to want to open that folder and select the SVG file type. It might display with the internet icon and say HTML file, but that's totally fine. You could upload that file as well, because sometimes your computer doesn't know how to display an SVG. So you're just going to hit upload and save and enter it into your canvas. And the first thing you're going to want to do is make sure that it is 12.5 inches in height. Sometimes the SVG files won't upload the correct size, so we're just going to double check. And you can also copy and paste. So I'm just going to drag this over and show you that you can resize it to fit in a 9 by 9 shadow box. You're going to make it 8.5 inches in height, and then you can cut it this size if you're going to put it into a shadow box. But I'm just going to delete that because we are going to work on 11 by 14 wooden panel. So I'm just going to show you how to size it correctly to whatever surface you have. Maybe you have an 8 by 10 frame. Maybe you have a different size. So you can make a square box, and we are just going to size it to whatever size surface you have. And mine is 11 by 14. So that's what I made the gray box. And I'm going to send it to the back. And this is how proportioned it would look. So you can resize it according to this gray box. So I like to do that to show me how it's going to look on my actual wooden panel. So you could come over to the right in the layers panel and just turn off your eyeball for the gray box, or you could delete it if you don't need it anymore. So we're going to click on the SVG, and we are going to right click and click ungroup. And now you can select each flower or leaf. And the rain boots is still in its own group. So you can move it aside and you can right click again and you can select ungroup. And now you can select each layer of the rain boots. And I believe there is 6 layers in all. So I'm just laying it out so you can see all the different layers of the rain boots. And you could select a layer and change the color. So let's say you wanted to do pink rain boots instead of the teal. You would just select that layer and come up to the top and change the color. So now I have pink rain boots, but it's just totally up to you if you want to change the color of this project. That's how you would do so, but I'm just going to leave it how I have them. And then come up here to the flowers and the leaves. You can see each flower is still in its own little group. So you can right click on a flower and ungroup it. And this way you can select each layer of the flower. So if you want to change the colors of the flowers, you can do so like that. My pink flowers are 2 different pinks. So if you want to change it to one color pink to use less cardstock, that's totally up to you. You could do it that way. Or you could come over to the color sync and you can see all the different colors that you're using and what shapes belong to that color. So let's say I wanted to make all my pink flowers one color pink. I would drag those shapes to the same color, and that's how you can make them all one color as well instead of changing it individually. But I'm just going to leave them as is, and this project is ready to cut. So since we are using 8.5 by 11 standard cardstock, we can go over to our mat size and change it to 8.5 by 11 letter. So this will change your mat to fit that paper. It actually moved one of the daisies to a new mat, so I'm just going to move it back because I know there's room for it right there. And then we can leave this one fine, and we can change this one to the 8.5 by 11. And you could just finish correcting your mats to make sure it'll all cut correctly on an 8.5 by 11 sheet. Now to cut cardstock, you're going to want to use a light grit mat or a standard grit mat. Both of which you don't want them to be brand new or really, really sticky because this can cause your cardstock to rip. So what you can do is take a towel and press it all over your new mat so it could take some of the stickiness off. I know that sounds crazy, but you don't want a really super sticky mat when dealing with cardstock. You're going to want like a dulled out semi-sticky mat. And if it's really dulled out, you can use your painter's tape and you can hold down your cardstock by taping down the edges. And this is very helpful when your design is really intricate, like a mandala, and it goes back and forth with the needle a lot. And this will keep your paper cardstock from shifting when it's cutting. So you're going to want to make sure you're cutting on cardstock plus. You're going to hit the load button, and after it's loaded, you can hit the Cricut icon to cut. Once it's done cutting, unload it and have your next mat ready to go. And make sure you have your cardstock laying the way it is on the mat so it will cut correctly and not cut off any of your design. So once your mat is done cutting, you can unload it. And I'm going to be using just 2 mats in this project, so I'm going to be rotating them. So I'm going to want to take this project off of my mat so I can reuse my mat for the next layer that I have. So you can use your spatula to peel off the excess, and then you're going to use your metal small spatula to lift off your design, and this will help it from curling your paper. You could rather curl your mat back and lift with the spatula, because if you pull your cardstock straight from the mat, it will curl it and give it an odd shape and warp your cardstock. You're not going to want that. So just bend back your mat, and so the cardstock can lift off, and you can use your spatula to help lift it up. And this is how you would get off all these tiny little pieces. And to clean your mat, you're going to get your Cricut scraper and just scrape everything to the side and make sure it's nice and clean before you lay down your next piece of cardstock. So now I am on to my yellow layer, and I'm going to load it into my Cricut machine, leaving it on Cardstock Plus, and going to let it cut. And once that's done, I'm going to unload it and load the next mat I have of my green cardstock, and make sure it is laying the correct way, horizontal or portrait, to make sure your design does not get cut off. I can't tell you how many times I messed up by not laying my cardstock down. So make sure you refer to your design space image so you can know which way to lay down your cardstock. So I removed my yellow layer from my mat, and now I am going to remove my green layer of my leaves from my mat. And this mat was kind of sticky, so I wanted to make sure I use that Cricut scraper to get under my cardstock to keep these from curling or ripping. You want to be very delicate and gentle with cardstock when pulling it off the mat. These spatulas work great to help you do that. And next, we're just going to clean off those mats again with a scraper. And of course, I lost 3 of my tiny little daisy circles. So I'm here to find them, and they are the ones with scallop edges. So make sure you keep an eye on those little circles when you're cutting the yellow layer. So now I'm cutting my bottom layer to my rain boots. It's just one solid piece. And I always have my next mat ready to go so I can save time when cutting. And I take off my shapes and I add it to a pile of my cuts. Next, I'm going to load my last piece of blue cardstock, and I'm going to load that into my Cricut. And some good tips, if your cardstock starts to rip, make sure that your needle is clean. Sometimes if you're working on different projects, you could get glitter or chunks of vinyl stuck on there. So it's good to pull out your blade and to make sure it's nice and clean before you cut your cardstock. Or sometimes there's debris stuck onto your mat that you didn't get cleaned off, like a small piece of cardstock that can also tug on the blade and cause your cardstock to rip. So those are the things to look out for if you're having any trouble cutting your cardstock. And I really love this large Cricut scraper. It really comes in handy when you're using cardstock and cleaning off those small pieces off your mat. And now we're down to the final 2 cardstock papers. I'm going to load in the black layer and let that cut. And then I'm going to get my pink cardstock layer ready to cut and load that into the Cricut. And next we are just going to do the same thing. We are just going to peel off the cardstock excess, and we are going to gently fold back your mat and use the spatula to help you lift off those fine delicate pieces. With these small flower centers, it really just takes patience and a little gentleness to lift them off from your mat. I'm telling you, these metal little scrapers will be your best friend when working with cardstock. So you can just add all your cutouts to your pile. And then next we are going to organize them. We are going to start off with the flowers. You're going to have one large, medium, and two small flowers. And then you'll have the 3 small daisies. And for the green leaves, you're going to have 2 that point to the right, and 1 is going to be pointing to the left. And then the small one would be pointing down. And to make these look more realistic, I'm going to take a wooden skewer and I'm going to lay it down the center of each leaf. And I'm just going to press it down in between my fingers to curl it inward. You're going to want to do these to all your leaves. Just center it down the middle of your leaf. If you don't have a wooden skewer, you can use your metal spatula, any kind of sharp edge. And next we are going to move on to the daisies, and we're going to do the same thing with those, but I'm going to use my metal spatula. Since these are really tiny, I'm just going to have them fold upward onto the spatula. So I'm pressing it in between my fingers and pressing down to give them a curled look. And if you don't have any of these Cricut tools, you could try using a ruler to curl the small daisies. Or you could just use your fingers or leave them flat. It's totally up to you. I just kind of like them to look realistic. So now I'm going to take my hot glue gun and put a little dab of glue on my daisy, which is 2 layers. And then I'm going to add my yellow center on top of that. And now we are going to curl the pink flowers. And I'm going to use my wooden skewer again. And I'm just going to curl upward each corner of a petal. And then I'm going to turn around and do the other corner. And I'm just curling them up and inward. And then I'm lifting all the petals in the center so it can fold. All these flowers have 2 layers to them. So you're just going to do the exact same thing to the top pink layer. You're just going to curl one corner of the petal inward and curl the other side inward as well. And take your hot glue gun, add a little bit to the center, and make sure you line them up so your petals aren't laying directly on top of each other. You're going to want them spread out. And then now you can add your top center to your flower. And look at how cute your flowers are coming out. I went ahead and curled all of them, and we're just going to have them set aside and ready to go when we assemble everything at the end. Next, I'm going to show you how to put together your layered mandala rain boots. Before we put this together, let's get our foam tape prepped and ready to go. I'm using a piece of parchment paper and I'm laying out a long strip of foam tape, and I'm going to take an X-Acto blade, or you can use a rotary blade if you have one, and I'm going to cut my small strips to match the width of my cardstock. So having all these pre-cut and ready to go will make life so much easier when you're putting together these layered mandalas. To make sure your rain boots are in the correct order, please refer to your SVG design in Design Space to see which order these rain boots go in. And you're going to start with the bottom 2 layers of the rain boots, and you're going to flip it over on the second layer, and you're going to add foam tape to the back. I'm just going to make sure that I add foam tape to the tops and the sides and down the middle. This would just give it a nice balance when you layer it on top. And for the small cardstock piece, you're going to get your small thin strips of foam tape, and you're going to add it to the bottom, to the top, and to the corners, places where you think it might lift up. You don't have to get too crazy with the foam tape and placing it everywhere on the back of your cardstock. The foam tape is pretty strong and the cardstock's pretty light, so you just got to make sure you have it in the essential places on the back. and then we are going to layer this directly on top of your bottom piece. And now we are going to do the same thing with the next layer. Flip it over onto the back, and we are going to place our foam tape all over the back. And we are going to layer it directly on top of those two other layers. And we are just going to repeat the process. Apply your foam tape and take your time when placing it directly on top. You're going to want to make sure you get it correctly centered. And this is our last piece that is the most challenging. You're going to need nothing but your small foam strips and place that gently on top and press down so it will stick. For my black outline layer, which is the top layer, I'm going to use just some craft glue and place tiny dots and lay that on top and let that dry. After it's dry, we can begin to assemble onto our sign. So our wooden panels should be dry by now. We are going to lay this down and we are going to apply our rain boots to the bottom middle of the panel. And I'm just going to add some hot glue all around my rain boots to stick it onto my wooden board, like so. And then next we are going to arrange the flowers. So I'm going to refer to my image in Design Space to see how my flowers are arranged. So I'm just going to freely lay them out and try to match the design I have before I glue anything down. So once you're happy with the placement, we could begin to assemble. For the flowers, I am going to use foam tape. And to get them to pop off of the board, I'm going to fold my foam tape twice. So this will give it like 4 layers of foam tape. And I'm going to place my daisy on top. And for the leaves, I'm going to use my hot glue and place it under the flower. And this is what I'm going to do for all of the flowers that I have. I am going to fold my foam tape twice to give it depth so the flowers are like popping out of the rain boots. So I just start at one end of the rain boots and I lift one flower at a time so I don't lose the placement of that flower. And this is how I get it to look how I designed it in the SVG. The foam tape stuck nicely to the wooden panel. It also stuck to the canvas surface in the back of a 9x9 shadow box. So I don't see a problem using foam tape to adhere your flowers to any wood surface. It held up pretty nicely along with the hot glue. This wood painting panel has a nice depth to it, so you can have it set on a bookshelf or you could have it hang flush on a wall, and you don't need to attach any string because it has that nice lip in the back for you just to set on top of your nails. Another good thing about these painting panels is they come pretty light. They're not heavy at all, and they won't cause a lot of pressure on your wall. So now I'm just finishing up the last flowers on the panel. I'm placing the foam tape on the back, and you want to make sure you put the pink flowers behind the small daisies, and you give those daisies extra foam tape so they could stick out more since they're so small. And once you have all that done, we have our whole sign assembled for the springtime. I hope everybody enjoyed my workshop video and gained a little bit more confidence on doing paper crafts. I gave some helpful tips on how to cut cardstock. So I hope you get to try out my file. And if you love it and you just want to see more of these SVGs, go ahead and head over to my blog, Gina C. Creates, and sign up for one of my 2 memberships. I have a forever free membership that will let you get access to all my free SVGs. And my full access membership, which is a paid monthly membership of $7, and you can get access to my entire SPG shop for free and download as many SPGs as you want. And this is great for small business crafters because it comes with an unlimited commercial license for you to be able to use my designs on your products. And you can find links to those after this tutorial video. I just want to thank you guys all for participating in this event with me today and watching my workshop video. And I really hope I get to see more of you guys soon over at GinaCCreates.com. Till then, happy crafting.